have it and hold it, but they're really thinking about the utility of it. So the closer you are to the Bitcoin ecosystem, the better, and derivatives just reducing risk.
Any immediate reactions to that? No. And then Simran, I mean, you as a market maker are effectively crypto derivatives the proving ground for a 24/7 global market. What is your take, and what is your role effectively in this whole picture and equation as a market maker?
Yeah, sure. So originally I came from a commodities trading background, and I remember there was like a 2:30 energy settles, and there wasn't much trading going on after that, and everyone was praying for the weekends. And then coming to crypto, it's like there's no official close. Markets are literally trading 24/7. Imagine taking a holiday where you literally can't leave your laptop because God knows what's going to happen and who's going to get liquidated. So I think crypto derivatives is the front edge of having a 24/7 market in terms of what that's able to unlock. I mean, I think Eric touched on it earlier quite well, which was in traditional finance, you have this methodology which is used by most institutions that are above a certain threshold called the standard initial margin model, I believe, which presumes a 10-day closeout period, right? In crypto, we say it's like a 1 hour, 2 hour window for OKX or Binance to liquidate. Imagine thinking it's going to take 10 days for you to be able to recoup your losses. By moving all of this on chain, you're able to increase capital efficiency by magnitudes. And instead of having to rely on a worst case scenario of a 10-day Monte Carlo simulation, I can just say, hey, I don't have to charge you 50% initial margin. I don't have to charge you 70% initial margin. I can charge you 10% initial margin, give you way more flexibility, and also give you flexibility in what you're able to post as collateral as you have this tokenization of real world assets happening at the same time. I think I answered maybe 2 questions at once, but it's the composability of real assets, real world assets, bringing them on chain, but then giving you access to how you can leverage those assets any time of day, any day of the week, any day of the year.
And can you develop a bit further on your specific role as a market maker in this type of market? What are there any specificities and so on?
Yeah, so I mean, as you begin to see this convergence of market participants, right? For people who are very crypto native, what are you rich in? You're rich in your BTC, you're rich in your high quality liquid assets like Bitcoin. As you have people from traditional markets who are rich in treasuries, they want to be able to still partake in crypto markets, but then be able to leverage their balance sheet in the most efficient way possible. So being able to sit as a central intermediary from a liquidity perspective and from a funding perspective, and being able to accept all of those things as collateral and give our clients maximum flexibility in how they want to deploy their capital, when they want to deploy it, where they want to deploy it is kind of the ideal situation for me, right? My goal is to allow our clients to have maximum flexibility while still staying within our risk limits and margin limits. And this really helps facilitate that in a very elegant way.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, the thing with the blockchain is that it is transparent. So let's go on to the privacy question. And whether that poses any particular problems, that it is effectively public and traceable, transparent. Do you see, David, any legal implications in this equation, and if so, which?
So I think I'd come at it first really more from a technology perspective rather than a legal perspective. I mean, for example, I sit in Asia. Asia has a very different view of privacy issues than here in Europe. And the real question is there technology that is flexible enough to address the needs in different markets? I think the good news is that, yes, there is. I mean, first at a top level, you have different chains that you can execute on. You can execute on a public blockchain. And sure, that is going to be more inherently transparent. You can also execute on a private blockchain, and you'll have different types of protocols, different levels of access, different sorts of disclosures that are agreed to by the parties that are on that private chain. There's also a host of other technologies that are going to go, like I'm aware of them. I'm not a technologist at that level, but you have fully homomorphic encryption, which basically allows for computation to take place on encrypted data without decrypting it. I don't know how you do that, but apparently it's possible to do it. And so what that means is that you can actually have smart contracts that are both encrypted, where you can perform the necessary kind of math, if you will, to complete the transaction without decrypting many of the elements. So you have that way to address needs. So if you have a GDPR and there's certain elements that you need to protect, that gives you the ability. You also have zero knowledge proof types of transactions, where you would have a transaction, for example, let's say I have a smart contract with you to buy a derivative, and the band of closing that transaction is anywhere from, I don't know, 1 to 5 million euro. I'm making that up, but whatever that is, there's a way to verify that my bank balance can support that without telling you what my actual balance is. So yeah, I'm good for it, but you don't know how much more than that I'm good for. So you have a lot of protection on that level as well. You then also have to have other capabilities that you see mirrors of this in traditional finance. You have pseudonymization, which if I were to put that in payments world, tokenization. You can basically assign a fake username to someone. So if you, for example, are trying to, let's say now we have a corporate user and they're big in a particular sector, you don't want to know that they're buying extra amounts of, I don't know, raw rubber on the market. I don't know, maybe they're an athletic shoe manufacturer, and you want to find out if you can short or long rubber, right? Well, there's a way to not know that it's Adidas that's executing this contract that might give a market signal, for example. So there's that way. You also then have private stablecoin account capabilities, where you can have users who, it's kind of like a private members club, where you can have your own account to protect private elements of that transaction. And you also have ways to have audits that are privacy preserving audits. So there's a whole series of technologies that we as an industry can deploy to address the different levels of privacy that a transaction, that market participants, that corporations, or that regulators and governments might demand at a given point, based on their laws and needs.
So different types of solutions with regard to privacy. We'll discuss about the Canton solution, but maybe Simran first. Is transparency a good thing per se from an economic and market type of perspective, especially also here in the crypto derivatives and in general, of course, on capital markets? Or how do you see that, and how does it relate with the fact that at least when it's on a public blockchain, in principle, everything is visible, including collateral, etc.?
So I view privacy and trust as kind of very interrelated topics. Distinction with a difference, but still quite interrelated. When you think about the ethos upon which crypto was founded, right? It was like, I don't want a central intermediary, and I don't want to have to trust this centralized counterparty to be the store of my value and to be the arbiter of anything. And so from that perspective, the idea that you should have a complete lack of privacy for any of these things kind of seems facetious and kind of silly to fully believe in. And when you also think about like this inherent distrust of major centralized institutions, of why people prefer things like cash over having to spend on credit cards or anything like that, right? You don't want to leave a digital trail. You don't want Big Brother to always be watching over you, regardless of whether they are or not. So there's one element of it, which is I should be able to deploy the value that I have, the capital that I have, in an efficient way without having to worry about leaving an audit trail and kind of disclosing what I'm doing. Right? There's a reason why major hedge funds, the likes of Bridgewater or anyone else, is not completely disclosing what strategies they're using and what alpha they're generating. In real time. But the other side of that is there are regulatory requirements, right? There are central regulators that are just like, hey, we want to preserve your average Joe Schmo, your retail investor. We want to make sure people aren't taking ungodly amounts of obscene risk and leading into another 2008, 2009 fiasco. So we do need these rail guards in place to be able to disclose certain amounts of information in a very selective way, such that the guardians of markets, regulators in place, and traditional institutions can still do their jobs effectively and have a pulse on how much risk actually exists in the space, and be able to report on that, analyze on that, without having to disclose in real time what everyone and their mother is up to.
Thank you. So Eric, what type of risks do you see with this full transparency? And if so, if you see any relevant risks, what is your solution in tackling these risks?
Yeah, sure. sorry to disagree with a good partner of ours here, but basically everything he listed is a giant risk. So, you know, I was.
He was sharing it. It wasn't endorsing.
So I'll substantiate it. I'm not just going to throw some shit in there. So, you know, I'm old enough to have been in the Bitcoin forums in 2009 and 10 when Satoshi and Zuko were talking about Bitcoin cannot meet its goals without privacy, and that it was a bug. The transparency was a complete bug, but that ZK was so far away that they wouldn't wait for it. They pushed anyway, and they said, one day maybe we'll figure this out. Fast forward 15 years, it's still very, very far away from being figured out. Just last week, I don't know if people are following this Solana confidential transactions story, but the types of bugs you can have in zero knowledge allow holders of assets to just mint arbitrary amounts of the asset and for nobody to know. So imagine Circle gets asked by the regulator, where's all your money? They go, well, I know there's $1 million there. I know there's $1 million there. In this pool of stuff I can't see, maybe there's $1 million there. I think it's disqualifying just right off the top. Those types of bugs are just, they'll always exist in ZK and FHE. You'll never be able to guarantee that you get rid of them. And so it's solving a different problem. It's the sort of thing that you would use for different applications. It's just it's not supposed to be your privacy layer for assets. And then disclosure becomes a really big thing as well, because when you think about what privacy means, it's not anonymity. There's this confusion classically in the crypto space about anonymity versus privacy. As a very OG Bitcoiner, I would like anonymity in Bitcoin, yes. But when we talk about a stable coin and we talk about collateral, anonymity is quite counterproductive. As an issuer of an asset, I must know everything going on in my asset at all times. I must know every holder to see every transfer. It's not just me. I have to disclose that to people that are supporting me, like my elliptic TRM chain analysis of the world. I have to selectively disclose pieces of data to regulators when I get asked. And then as a holder, I have the same thing, but from a different view. It's what I do, not what someone else sees. So getting this whole asymmetric world of like what I see, what I can disclose, what I need to do, you end up inventing a protocol that ends up looking a lot like Canton when you get to the end of it. So it's not just about protecting this information, it's about then selectively disclosing it under the right conditions. And what's really popular right now are the stablecoin ecosystem is exploding. If you guys are not on that bandwagon, get on it. And the new entrants into that space are the ones that are the most aware of the need for privacy, because it's no longer people in the crypto casino moving stuff across exchanges or risk off into DeFi. It's now payment providers, banks, payroll companies. Imagine doing payroll in your company and every employee knows what everyone else gets paid. And maybe they don't know today, but it's part of a permanent public record, so they will find out at some point. Obfuscation doesn't work. And one of my favorite little Twitter bots was you could put in a pub key, they tell you the Twitter account associated with it. So especially with AI getting better and better and better, you're giving them highly structured data that they're just waiting to see one leak, and then they could put this whole graph together. So privacy is paramount to the next wave of adoption in the markets. And they're paramount to keeping things fair. If I know what GSR's positions are, we were talking about 1 to 2 hour variation margin cycles. If they're short gamma on the exchange and the market's up and they're delivering variation margin, I know that now as an innocent bystander. And that could really interfere with his ability to make markets if I'm someone quoting him or trying to get him on the wrong side of a trade. So this information is everywhere. It's very, very easy to piece together. We used to be able to do this in blind central limit order books with no information. Now if you gave me a permanent long-term record of all that data, we could do even more. And that was 15 plus years ago at DRW. I was doing stuff like that. So, it's been very effective to have these transparent systems today for network building, for awareness, for education. But the next wave must come with privacy.
Yes, please. Circle.
So I wanted a couple of things. First of all, the privacy elements I was talking about before were more about how you preserve privacy within a transaction, if you wanted to, and the technology's there. I'm gonna be super clear. In terms of transparency for what's backing USDC, we're huge believers in that. And in fact, any one of you who want, while I'm talking, you can Google or whatever search engine you want, BlackRock USDXX. That is the Circle Reserve Fund. About 90-ish% of our assets are in that fund. It is fully public. So I think the last time I checked, we have about 62 billion in assets. The last time I checked, there's about 56 billion of that was sitting in this account. It is, You can see at the asset level what is in there, what treasury, what QSIP, how much cash, how much treasury. It is marked to market every day. It is audited monthly by Deloitte. So if you want to know what's behind that USDC $1 token, you can find it online. The rest of those assets are with GSIBs, but very, very transparent. We've been talking a lot about transparency kind of as a virtue. I want to talk about one other quick virtue, if I might, that I think is really important to promote the development of crypto and capital markets. And that's what we've aspired to be, and I think what we've achieved. And that's to be boring. We want USDC and stablecoin to be boring. It's not like something you have to think about. It's not exciting. How much is your USDC worth? $1. How much is it worth tomorrow? $1. What's it worth next year? $1. Perfect. But I'll tell you something. This was hard won to be boring. Because even 3 years ago, if you look how regulators thought about stablecoin, they thought about it the same way they thought about any other digital asset. They've only just realized this is a really boring product, right? And what it's allowed is allowed for a proliferation of regulation. So what I would argue, as an industry, what we can do best to gain acceptance, to do the really exciting stuff, let's be boring. So what's the thing we're focused on next as our tokenized assets? A money market fund. We acquired a firm a few months ago called Hashnote, tokenized money market fund. How risky is it? As risky as a money market fund is. How big is the return? A money market return. But guess what? Regulators love it. They're really excited. They want to know about it. Is it the most exciting thing we could be doing? No. Is it the most exciting thing as an industry we're going to do? Absolutely not. But if we want to do the really exciting stuff, we need to be boring first. Gain the trust and acceptance of regulators, of the market, of big financial institutions, of big players, hedge funds, et cetera. Then, when we gain that confidence over time, and we already can be doing it in the background with people who have the risk appetite, but over time we can gain acceptance for the more exciting stuff. So transparency, good. Boring, also really good.
It helps when you're not an algorithmic.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm quite sure this discussion has not been boring. We could go on for a couple of few hours. I got the signal we need to close, but I'll still do the closing round. So, Simran, please just one or two sentences. What is the piece of advice you would give institutions which are preparing for entering or operating into this 24/7 type of crypto derivatives market?
Spin out a Canton node. You're still early.
Thank you. David?
Be boring, but not for too long. There's lots of exciting opportunity ahead, really. And so I think smart contracts, AI, with a boring backbone product like stablecoin USDC, is I think going to be a really powerful combination.
Get in the game, find an entry point, start sooner rather than later. Anything.
Wonderful. Thank you, the panelists, for this solution, for the highly fruitful discussion.
I'd also like to take this opportunity, Eric, just to thank you, and Canton and Digital Asset for being a sponsor as well. So thank you very much. We got to take a picture. Sorry, Channel, for the sponsors. Thank you very much. Okay, quickly, Walter. Yeah, please do. I think she's the lady.
You got a camera here.
Yeah, you got her.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh.
We have to go.
Oh, okay. Oh, super.
So we keep your marketing department happy. The
No,
vodka is
我
very
就会说很基本的这样，那个拉外水平的中文。
Okay.
yeah.
So how many years have you been in Singapore?
Thank you very much.
这次是8年了，
8 years.
是8年了。
18 years.
对对，没错。
Really, it's boring to be in Singapore.
No, no.
Good afternoon.
Singapore is my home.
Welcome.
So good. You bored?
So please take a seat. We have our last panel before the break. You can do all the networking in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So stay with us. Have an hour. So thank you, Karen, for having us. Just a quick one. Thank you, because LF Decentralized Trust, better known as Linux Foundation in the past, is also one of our sponsors. So thank you very much for making it happen. Take it away.
Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you.
I hate to be the last one before the break, so we will make sure we are not boring and keep it quite interesting and exciting. And then you can talk about the discussion over drinks afterwards. Let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Karen Otoni. I'm the Senior Director of Ecosystem at LF Decentralized Trust. And if you're not familiar with the organization, we are part of the Linux Foundation, and we host open source code and communities in a neutral home. So we are hosting a lot of the technologies that you will hear about this week that central banks, private sector, many different financial institutions are using for a lot of the financial services use cases that you hear about here at Point Zero Forum and elsewhere. And so that's why we wanted to have a conversation with this panel about why open source is important for creating resiliency in financial systems. I think that's something that's on our minds as we build new systems and also integrate with old as well, and given just everything that's going on. So could I invite the panelists to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll kick it off.
My name is Miguel Diaz. I am with the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub, and dealing with strategy, trying to understand what the central bank community needs to do in order to continue providing the services that we have provided to societies in the past. So under this new environment, with all these new technologies developing quite fast, this topic of how we can collaborate both among the central banking community, but also with the private sector and with everyone, basically, because otherwise speed can be quite significant.
Thanks, Miguel. I'm Wikito. So I look at business architecture for Kinex's digital payments. We are a blockchain unit within JP Morgan. We have a blockchain-based payments network that does about 2 billion in transactions from a value perspective daily. So I used to be from the BIC Innovation Hub. So a good example of collaboration between the private sector and the public sector.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicky Arias-Singer. I lead business development for Chainlink Labs in APAC, based out of Sydney, Australia. For those of you who don't know Chainlink, we essentially do two things. One is we bring off-chain data on-chain securely, reliably. And secondly, we move tokens across different blockchains. We connect different blockchains, enable that free movement of tokens and messages. So we work with commercial banks, central banks, FMIs, and asset managers. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. So you each work in different areas and have different perspectives in the financial services space. So from each of those perspectives, what do you think are the weaknesses right now or unresolved challenges in how these decentralized technologies are reshaping the financial system?
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we're starting from the bottom up, probably, with the central banking community. The central banks have always provided with a basic representation of money. So where we stand right now is a world in which the traditional representation of paper or plastic or metal is no longer enough to basically provide the services to societies as we have been providing for lots and lots of years. So right now we are in a process of evolving and trying to integrate these new perspectives. And there are many ways of going forward. As long as it is digital, then we have many paths to go. I believe that the main issues on why we have not been able to bring alive some of the functionalities that the decentralized world can bring to the markets is because we have been trying to do everything from scratch again. And I think that a much more intelligent and fast solution is to allow for this integration between the old and the new. We have in the BIS this perspective saying enhance the old and enable the new. And I believe that this is a very important challenge that we have as an industry, as a community, how we can bring in these new functionalities in a way that is consistent with how the previous network externality already worked. So you have the way in which money works, the creation of private money, everything has been established over many years of trial and error. And trying to redo this again might be an overkill and unnecessary. So we believe that there is a space for these new functionalities. There is a good way of doing this, which is trying to integrate and trying to provide these new functionalities for the public. And in this line, everyone has a role to play, like the private sector, the public sector, the central banking community. And the objective is how we can coordinate, because in the end, the objective we all have in the room is to provide people with the capabilities to settle transactions in the new digital economy. And how we can do this in a world in which the transactions by the demand by the people are going to increase exponentially in the near future. So it's an ongoing challenge, but it is something that I have seen that is starting to change in terms of this integration between these different ideas and how to bring out the best of what already exists and then put on top the best of what can exist given the new technologies.
I just wanted to add one point to what Miguel was saying. So you gave a really nice explanation of, I guess, the public sector, private sector. I wanted to lay on the other perspective of like how we look at, say, let's say, for example, we talk about any digital token today. I would say that we think about it from a technology level, from a business level, and from a legal regulatory level. Now, from a technology level, I think there is a lot of learning from the DeFi space. They've been using the technology for more than a decade. There's just so much that, from a bank's perspective, we are also looking at how we can make use of this innovation. Now, from the business level, that's also really interesting because we are starting to see convergence. So business level, I'm talking more from how do we run like a payment token product, for example. So if you start looking at stablecoin issuers, a lot of them are looking at getting licensed potentially as banks. From a bank's perspective, we are looking at how to use public blockchain, use open blockchains, and having the ability to deploy new payment products on such blockchain networks. So there is a lot of convergence over there, and I think we are now starting to figure out how to actually build a business around this whole set. So like I was mentioning, from a Kinex's perspective, we are live today, though it is still with a private network, but we do about 2 billion in transaction value every day. And lastly, the regulatory perspective, I do think that is the part where, like Miguel was mentioning, there is really a bit of a meeting of the old and the new, because we talk about new technology, new business innovations, but regulations itself, a lot of the regulations, they are meant to be enduring. They have been set up maybe 50 years ago or sometimes even longer. So is there a possibility that maybe because of the technology and the business, we have better ways of managing these? And because of that, maybe regulations should also kind of evolve to allow us to take advantage of these benefits.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I think to Miguel's point again about that meeting of the old and the new, one of the things that we believe in is essentially giving financial services organizations options. And the classic view, giving a little bit of a Web3 perspective, is why doesn't everybody move on to this amazing new technology straight away as soon as possible? But at the end of the day, there's so much financial market infrastructure that's been built over decades. But I think also this idea that there's a transition phase, which is not a short phase by any means, it's a long phase. To transition to new technologies takes time, but importantly involves this intermeshing between those two types of technologies. So one of the things that we did was we've spent a lot of time working with Swift in building a connector so that organizations that are on the Swift network can enact on-chain blockchain transactions. So in the back end, it's our work with Swift. But if you're a bank user, you can use that particular connector and not have to change any of your infrastructure. So that's one way to kind of transition organizations over time. And then as their capabilities improve, they may interact directly and so on. But it's just an example of a transition. I think in terms of how we see that transition playing out as well, I think it's going to take time. And I think one of the things that we're seeing now is, to Wiki's point, the technology has been around for quite a long time, and large enterprises and banks and financial services organizations have been either doing POCs, but importantly going forward to pilot and sometimes production deployments like JPM, for example. But I think what we're also finding is, to your earlier question about the application of truly decentralized applications, particularly in the public blockchain space, what we're finding is, yes, you can go through the POC and pilot phases, you can demonstrate business value, there's obviously technological value and so on, but aligning the regulatory, legal, and compliance approvals of a large financial institution to be able to approve a truly decentralized application is a really, really challenging thing. I think the classic example that you may hear technology organizations speak about is, if you're a large financial institution and you're signing off on a new technology deployment, you want a throat to choke, figuratively speaking. But I think with decentralized technologies, ultimately challenges that notion, right? Ultimately, there is no throat to choke. It is truly decentralized. It is out in the public sphere, being worked up by a wide range of organizations. So then the key is, how do you accept and manage the risk, the compliance components, and so on in a decentralized financial market infrastructure? So that's what we're seeing now, particularly as you see full-scale production deployments emerge, is large financial institutions having to go through that learning process and, essentially an educational process outside of technology and outside of business, with those risk, compliance, and legal teams to sign off on those types of deployments. And that's not necessarily a unsurpassable obstacle by any means, but we're in that phase now where it's quite intense type discussions.
If I may add just one little thing, is I think this enhancing the old and enabling the new applies not just for technology, it also applies for regulation, and it also applies for everything. So when you think about the basic functionality and the basic rationale of some of the regulatory elements, for example, prudential regulations on deposit taker institutions, and then you start trying to fit these new solutions, such as stablecoins and so on, into these schemes, you realize that many of these prudential regulatory elements need to be embedded also in the stablecoin issuance, for example. So what the colleague from Circle said regarding, I want this to be boring and my dollar be worth $1, this is exactly what prudential regulation is all about. To have the institutions that are issuing this representation of value in a way that generates trust for the institution. So just taking some of the comments that my colleagues have put forth, this is about trying to identify within what we already have, how can we extract that, and then allow for the marginal benefit that these new technologies and the new regulation that we need to put on. But it is important not to forget it, because otherwise we're in a circle in which we do not take what was already done and then spend 2 years trying to figure out how we get the singleness of money in which my dollar is worth $1. We have already gone through that. It's just a matter of reading a little bit more carefully what the regulations are all about, and thinking which ones of those have to be trimmed and which ones of those have to be put forth.
Thank you, Miguel. So a lot of what's happening in our community is actually very much about bridging the old and the new, because a lot of what's happening, DeFi isn't really traditional institutions aren't really ready to operate in that space. And in our community, there's a lot of work being done to act as a bridge where you are allowing for these institutions that maybe normally don't talk to each other, don't work together, don't collaborate together, to come together in a more open format and identify the areas in which they can leverage some of these innovations that are happening. So I want to get more into how each of your organizations are leveraging open source to help build some of these more resilient and adaptable financial infrastructure, and why is maybe a more open collaborative approach important for this time?
Yeah, I think if I was to think about open source technology, if you're thinking about two of the characteristics that stand out and which align very closely with our business, it's security and reliability. And I think for us, everything that we do as a company goes back to security and reliability. So from an open source perspective, if you're launching a new service, a new network, a new feature even, for us, we want to make sure that essentially the widest possible group of people has looked at that as it's gone through security reviews, etc. But importantly, from a technology perspective, those developers in particular have been a key part of that development process. So one of the ways in which we try to enact that is, may sound like a simple thing, but we think it's very, very important, which is really deep engagement with the developer community. And I think even with larger financial services organizations, I think the technology arms do a reasonable job of that as well. But I think for us, we do that via hackathons, we do that via deep engagement between our engineering teams and our product teams, with particular organizations and key technologists that operate in this particular space. But I think what's important there is, one, again, you're getting real experts out of the open source community looking at the technology, and again, having more people interact with it rather than perhaps building something in a lab type environment where it may be pristine, but ultimately you don't have that verification, you don't have people looking for bugs and so on, working through it. The second part is also product feedback. Right? Again, you can't really necessarily build stuff in isolation. You want to engage with the widest possible range of users as well, users of this particular technology. So one of the ways this manifests itself beyond just kind of ongoing engagement is actually in hackathons. For us, we actually think that's really kind of undervalued, particularly in financial services, where deeper engagement with technologists, but on working on very specific aspects that are important to that particular organization, can have a lot of value. So for us, from a philosophical standpoint, it comes back to security and reliability.
So Nikki, you summarized it really well. So I wouldn't talk too much about that perspective of it. I mean, very honestly, we are, so internally today, our blockchain is a Quorum blockchain, it's an open source blockchain. We use a lot of open source libraries in a lot of different work as well. So from that perspective, from a user usage perspective, I think that's definitely has been beneficial. So that's one part of it. I think the other part, which is really interesting for us, is the collaborative part of it. So this is where I'm thinking more from like a token standard perspective, for example. So if we see today that there's a gap in certain things that we want to do, so from a bank's perspective, there's one gap which is really obvious, which is the ability to exchange payments information such that banks have the ability to apply payments control on a transaction before allowing it to get processed on a blockchain network. That to us is something that is a gap today. We need a much better way of doing it. But when we look at something like that, it can't be just us as JP Morgan coming out and saying that, hey, this is one way that we want to do it. Because if you look at it from that perspective now, today there is probably over 100 blockchain wallets out there. There is probably more than 10,000 tokens that's been issued, probably at least a few hundred of them that are being widely used today. Now, the only way to get all of these parties to talk to each other is through a token standard. So if we ever want to propose a new mechanism to say get some of, propose a better way of doing certain things, it can't be us unilaterally just coming out and say, we want you guys to do it. It has to be a community effort. This is where I see really that whole value of bringing the community together. And that's why we do see a lot of value in working with parties like RMDT, because there is already a large community out there, all with very similar interests that says, actually, we are all facing similar problems. Why don't we come together and solve it together?
And I would like to add, I agree completely with the two positions here, but I would like to add the perspective of the central bank into this. So when we're talking about how money moves in one economy, this is a critically systemic piece of infrastructure. So this is foundational. If this goes awry, then we're in trouble as societies. So I agree fully with this idea of having resiliency and security as one of the main mandates of that. On top of this, when you see how financial market infrastructures, which are the basic foundational stones of how financial transactions are executed, you can see that these were developed in a different world in which we have these monolith architectures and so on. And these were quite complicated pieces of technology. As technology starts evolving in a much faster pace, it becomes almost impossible to keep up to date with all these different changes that you have to make. The types of architecture that we're using for FMIs is changing very significantly to modular architectures and so on. And it has become very clear that no one institution can keep up with all the technology that is around. So just take an example of how AI can get into this game and start being an operator of a financial market infrastructure. This type of new development, this is not something that even a large central bank from a large jurisdiction can handle. So or getting a community and opening your work to a community of entities with like-minded objectives becomes essential. This is not just a choice, but it is necessary if you want to keep up with the technology as it is evolving, because otherwise you end up behind and then your services are not useful for societies. And this is why central banks are trying to understand how we can do this in a safe way. How can we deal with dealing with critically systemic infrastructures and at the same time collaborating as a group? This modular architecture is very important for that. So bringing in modules from different entities that can put them together. This supports Wiki's point in terms of how we actually make these things fit. Well, if it is in the open source, I know what to expect as an input and what to provide as an output so that I fit the overall ecosystem. But it is a delicate question, as you can see. So it's a balance. It's a learning path for the central banks on how to open up without damaging the trust that societies have in the monetary system. So it is something that we have to develop. It's something that we have to bring on with the level of security that is necessary for people to continue to trust in the central banks and in the monetary structure in the country.
Thanks to steal it from you. You can finish. Does anybody have a question? Oh, there we go, Nico. I happen to know the questioner.
Yeah, so I was just curious, you guys mentioned standards and this sort of open collaboration approach that I totally respect and appreciate where you're coming from together. I'm very curious about something a little bit higher level in terms of, I've seen the BIS talk a lot about unified ledger architectures, right? How do you see coordinating best practices of actually implementing these unified ledger architectures? And do you see them, would there be value in doing so?
So totally. And
yeah.
we modified from unified ledger to unified ledgers.
Yes.
Just having one ledger would be quite...
It's a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah. So the idea is how to get the functionality going.
Yeah.
And what we think is it is not necessarily something to be mandated, but it's something that will attract different proponents of different solutions if the functionality is easier and more efficient in that way. So we don't have the silver bullet. I think no one has, and there are many different solutions out there. There is one particularly important detail which has to do not necessarily with the technology, but what underlies the technology, which is the trust. So what we have in the crypto world and what we have with asymmetric signatures and so on is a representation of trust. But the trust has to do with who's issuing these transactions. Of course, in the case of it's an algorithm issuing, then we have a separate discussion. But when we have entities that are issuing real-world assets, then we have the same problem as when you issue the same asset in a Postgres database. So it is exactly the same set of questions and the same set of conditions. And if we manage to get a protocol or a set of protocols that can actually interconnect different networks, we can all benefit from the network externality of joining that. So this is a little bit the perspective on these unified ledgers. We need to communicate this more clearly.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Okay, so I want to just close by asking, you all have talked about and emphasized the need for there being a lot of consideration of different aspects of the different layers, right? The business layer, the technology layer, the reg layer, different stakeholders. And so I just want to understand, given from each of your perspectives, what this is a new culture for the financial services space, right? These are not institutions or companies or organizations that necessarily have in the past collaborated in the way that is potentially necessary to actually harness the benefits of these use cases, these new technologies. And so what have you observed about the shifts that you see taking place, or the shifts that you see need to take place in order for us to really actually realize the goals of the things we're talking about?
I want to start by saying that, you know, when we look at just generally all of these things, there is an individual level and there's an organization level. So I would say that from an individual level, a lot of us are very happy being much more open with what we do, just because that's how we kind of been brought up within the space itself. So within the team, you know, a lot of us have been in the whole blockchain space for almost a decade, and we are very, that culture is just in us that says, hey, you know, this whole thing works because everyone is open and willing to work with each other, and we embrace that culture. But once it gets to an organization perspective, then everything eventually get measured in a dollars and cents perspective. And that's when we have to be very clear and being able to articulate why being open is actually good for us. And that's where, at least from a Connexus perspective, so like I was mentioning, we have a live blockchain-based payment system today. What we don't have is a lot of counterparties on the other side doing live transactions with, say, digital securities that provides a counterpart to what we are doing. Because if we are doing payments, we have to do it for an economic transaction. So we need an economic transaction on the other side. This is the part where we explain internally to senior stakeholders that we have to be open, we have to share what we are doing to really encourage growth in the accompanying sector. Because if the ecosystem grow, we are able to grow along with it. And that's how we kind of, at least from our perspective, that's how we reconcile individual interest of being open towards an organization interest of being open with what we are doing and facilitating ecosystem growth.
Yeah, I think probably two comments on this. I think one of the key changes that we've seen over the last year, roughly 10 years, is that you now actually have blockchain or digital asset teams within most large financial institutions. So when these questions come up, or just in a general sense, there's a ongoing advocacy going on within those large organizations by experts within that particular organization, which is great. You don't necessarily have people moonlighting in this particular space anymore quite so much as it did in the old days. But I think it's important because that's a trusted internally people that are known within that organization, that know that organization and are credible within that organization, that can then help to kind of take those particular discussions forward. So I think that's just almost an enabler of collaboration. The second part, just to build on a comment that Wiki made, is I think collaboration is important. At the same time, we also have to remember this idea of cooperation between financial institutions is not a natural state of being, generally speaking, but there is positivity that comes with it, and there's a desire to do it. So there's some mechanisms, I think, particularly in APAC, we've had several central banks like MAS and HKMA, and now the RBA in Australia and so on, that are really taking forward a lot of collaborative projects, which is amazing. I think BIS as well has been a tremendous standard bearer for that globally. I think that model really helps to bring some of the FMIs, central banks, regulators, and private sector participants together. The challenge comes in actually converting that into commercialization. And so I completely agree with Wiki's point. We're actually at that inflection point, and we observe that in the market as well, is you have a pretty substantial portion of the market that's done POCs and pilots that have one piece of the puzzle, whether it's tokenized cash or tokenized assets, that need to connect. And we're going through that kind of the hard work, let's say, of connecting those organizations up. But I think that opportunity is there. But I think overall, I think these types of collaborative projects really help to kind of catalyze the market.
I would like just to challenge a little bit the question, because they do collaborate. And this is why we have SWIFT and Visa and MasterCard, and why we have faster payment systems in many countries and so on. They just don't want to collaborate with newcomers. But I think it is important that they collaborate whenever they see the business opportunity of making the pie bigger. And from my time in Mexico City as a regulator, what I could see is that the most forward-looking banks that really understood technology understood that this was about growing the pie. And if we allow for the newcomers to join in, the pie becomes larger. And if I am more efficient than you and providing services and functionality for the clients, then my pie will grow as a bank, as a traditional bank. I think it's not necessarily a banker thing, it's a competition thing, and people don't like competition whenever they are in a nice place. But I think that this technology development, and going back to the openness of the technology, the question goes back to what is my competitive edge, and what will I share and what will I not share as a private entity. And again comes the central banking community with a very important role, which is we don't care about their profits. We care about providing services for societies, and we care about providing the platforms so that the private sector can provide many different solutions. So we have a role to play in this open collaboration in the side of technologies that are not necessarily in the competitive side, but in the community building side. And this has to do with creating new forward-looking financial market infrastructures, both centralized and decentralized, and trying to explore which technologies can provide for these platform structures so that the banks, the newcomers, the neobanks, and everything that has controlled risk mitigation elements for the services they're providing to consumers can come together and grow the network externality so that we can provide societies with a better way of actually settling their electronic transactions and bringing in the new digital services.
I just want to add one point. So I do feel that actions speak louder than words. And, I talk about us being open, but you'll probably look at JP Morgan and it's like, is it really true? So I do have to say that, we did some interesting research on payment tokens. We are actually sharing quite a bit of our research. You'll probably see in the next couple of days. Same thing last year, we did a lot of interesting research on programmability. We see that there's value in sharing what we have learned. So we published a report last year as well. So, that's really an example where we do see value in growing the pie. And we do that through action, not just saying that we see value in it.
I like that. So let's end on that. Action, not words, and let's grow the pie. Thank you for your questions and your attention, and I welcome you to drinks.
Thank you very much. We now have a coffee break for half an hour, just outside. And yes, please come back after that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to get a photographer. I'll get it. Just one second. Oh, you're good.
I play a photographer on TV.
You do? Okay, no, I'll get a photographer. Around the corner. I'll meet you.
Oh, I'm your guest. Guys, we're famous.
One minute. They do, yeah, he's there we go, the professionals. That's what we're writing. You want one? You like? We have professionals. Yes.
well, if you don't mind. Great. Thank you. Anything about here? Sure. Yes, Daniela has to come as well. Daniela. Everyone's networking. Yes, correct. Every sponsor gets a dedicated food.
This is our sponsor.
Yeah, the sponsor, you get it. It's very good. It's packed. It's like we're working. This was a construction site basically last week. So they just finished it.
This morning when I came
Someone lost it.
Check. Check.
Singapore was one of the very, very first thing I was and they did not even speak That's 3 years ago in Singapore, leading edge. Only 2 years ago they started. Very, 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 very behaviors in medical. It's great, and that's surprise. Singapore is great, and that's surprise. It's so I think this is a really important So if you're like a hot guy, but if you ever need to connect with someone, I'm going to have the policy. I don't. Yeah, that's jealous for you. No, this side is
It's pretty busy. Let us see here. Yeah, okay, so good. I don't know. And it's so loud. As well as to have a focus. It's a good space. It's just not to prevent this size. I mean, I'm surprised. What's the bit? The one thing I miss from the panels is there's no audience questions. I've been doing some different panels. Like, if I had to organize them, I would definitely do that. So, as I have a panelist, I lost. So far, there was no audience interaction. It's the best thing about a panel. You should put in a question that trigger different responses. They're just talking about their own thing. I mean, I will answer if there's some questions. I've heard people from some quantum hardware providers from Switzerland. Definitely something we need to pursue is trying to expand a bit like my military, looking for example, to what level of the supercomputing center would be interested in something like this. The grant is it's not a key on it. TRL. TRL. Oh, TRL. Yeah, exactly. For the critical infrastructure. I'm asking, I really can't. Absolutely. But I can't say it. Like I said, I mean, for us, it's also something very fresh. Because we didn't know it's going to come now. Like, I heard from the guys, yes, there will be something. Now it's coming a time when we're really overwhelmed a bit with grants. It's going to be the fourth one this year. And then, of course, for us, it's also preparation for next year for the big new ones, like the ESC accelerators. These are the real. This is the real. Yeah, this is the real one. Yeah, how much chances do we have? We have spoken about yet we are only we own a family business company. And so when we are writing grants, we also have to make it transparent to our owners. And what the financial balance is going to be. So we did not want to make too much transparency. We had to put in some direction. This is why although we won't help us it's not very. So how much control do you have high interest people when you discuss like let's say money committed toward the venture markets? This part of it. And it's for you. Okay, so guys
What's the next
there's some synergy. Well, I started developing a strategy and during my strategic work, I saw it, I said that we need startups, we need university partners, we need technology partners, and social programs. And finally, it's something I found in December 2020 about technology. And in that time, I hired came back and said, they know about startups, but they don't know about business. And let's start with my own business. And so we should develop Alpine Ventures, which then has been founded in May 23. And so we are writing for meetings together with investors where we have what they should be, but it's not the money the way it sounds here, it's the campus doing, and so we're buying it. Now coming to the concept, Alpine Ventures is not owned by Polish she's got some other investors in their funds as well. And so I big and loyal, our investor, is more looking around. And so this strategic alignment has a kind of representation, but we are still helping out. And so I say that we completely make our transparent, and the other way has research. Not that much, but I know the emissions in Singapore. I even have financial figures, and the other way around as well. So it's a kind of a family, but you are more siblings, and so you know how siblings are. So
Coming back to maybe why I'm asking was because you are saying that you're investing as to this 200K serious manner.
I think that my strength, my point is I don't know what their criteria is. I know they are investing in and I know that they, at least in one case, already invested 70 times. One case I know. The most thing would be the company investing will also have a kind of dependency on our campus. I already talked with your company. This is a goal that I want to have, just like companies like Volkswagen are in here, over Frederick, Alexander was more that these companies start to grow in Scotland. Now, this did not happen the first part, which was technically 50 million, was filled with maintenance and finance data. And the other part they did with Redstone. And so they had a dispute. And so they thought that Redstone I venture and this might be why they have slower into reinvesting, yet they are now policy of and then they are thinking about the series lead fund. I always say the first up the first numbers before starting it, and second one because I'm good one. But in their mind, they already have now that's closing this one. Now we think because
for me, as I'm thinking about 2026 and we go racing the next round, this is something that we're interested in participating. It's more than their cover runs.
Yeah,
we want to be more serious.
The information is speculative.
Yes, this around for the same thing as everyone else. We need to see it. Okay, maybe I'll spend more than 1.8%.
Okay, so it was then needed. No, I mean, in my opinion, I need this was
Last time, right? Back when a lot of people expressed the way that this is maybe self-taught, that you're maybe a way guy. I never owned the whole thing, just like wheels and not own the
scale of energy is sizable. It's just, for example, biochemical, right? These guys are getting off this 20 million degrees. Doesn't even need it. Yeah, just one investment.
Thank you so much.
I mean, that's their current one. I don't know how possible, how feasible is this thing there now. Well, they don't know. I did not raise money, but I hear so far. So they mentioned it before, so I gave you the specific records for the simulation part east. So I see is there is there is enough money and then this is the problem with good companies because they don't need so what you have left is like but I think they usually function to quite a bit of stuff there. One of these UAE funds at the guy was like, I just started talking to him as well. I just spoke today, literally an hour ago, from UAE. They would ask us if we could step in and open an office in Dubai. Yeah, they're really heavy. And they said also investment interest. Perhaps they would link us with investment. So you are at the UAE. So first of all, well, we've got New York, Abu Dhabi. We lose the past, but this is paid sales. That's the real problem. People offshore so curious to sit there in nice air conditioned office. Do I want to build the hardware there? I would say no. There is two unknown. Yet, because that's when you need established infrastructure the hardware system. Yeah, you will supply. Well, exactly. That's why there is a lot of strategies that
We will many other things.
how about we start yeah, he's nice. He's very nice. He's a very nice guy. Ja, du? Bist du jetzt gerade erst los, erzählt?
Ja, das war sagen, gerade auf Tag jetzt. Am Tag gestern.
I'm a nice guy, so I got to talk so nice. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah,
We can get away with everything like all the time. But that's it. Like that business, nice guys, success.
Yes, yes.
No, I just wanted to.
That's why we know each other.
Yeah,
we in the lab.
She works for another. I changed jobs.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But it was, he said the Linux Foundation became something else.
Yeah, NFT centralized trust.
You know that?
Yeah, Linux Foundation centralized. I just got, I got to play the music piece of the man.
Ja, aber wir kriegen auch bei den anderen.
Ja, das sieht wir sind nicht mehr.
There's a few people. Please come in. We're gonna start. Please grab a seat. I hope everyone is really caffeinated. We're going to talk about, I think, of all the technologies we're talking about, quantum is the one that's the most mind-boggling. So I'm excited to hear what our experts are going to say. But still.
I think you need to go outside.
I tried. It's hard to, the networking. You know, that's what we're here for, the net, and the networking aspect is very important. And I think it's always a good sign when people are networking. So, but there we go. They come in normally when the coffee beans run out, which happened a few times. All right, hey, thank you for still being here, hanging in here. This is now going to be a shorter session. We're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about quantum power. One of the technologies that gets a lot of attention recently. We're going to move on to social media and AI and media. I think that's a quick fireside chat that I'll be moderating. I'm looking forward to that. We have someone who's really expert on that topic. And I think AI and media, that's a big use case for better or worse. And we're going to finish off with sort of the heaviest topic with the rearmament of Europe. The question how we can, in the face of threat of America pulling back and Russia invading certain countries, how do we rearm and how we do that? So that's our afternoon's panel. But now I'm going to hand over to Clemens. Is he here? Oh, he's here. Wonderful. We have a met. Thank you, Clemens, for moderating the quantum power panel. There you go.
Thank you. So we'll be starting with this session on quantum technologies. And for that, I will call Werner, Marcus, Alessandro, and Damir directly to take place.
You have to share one mic.
So we'll jump right in, and maybe to get started, if you could say in a few words what your company is doing in the quantum space, and very briefly for people to know what is happening in quantum technologies.
I start. So Alessandro Curioni. I am responsible for the overall activity of IBM research in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And as you know very well, IBM has been involved since the beginning in the development of quantum technologies, especially quantum computers. And now we have developed a full roadmap that is going to bring this technology to its transformational power at the end of the decade.
Marcus Lynch. I'm the CEO and founder of Terra Quantum. Terra Quantum is a quantum as a service company, one of the largest quantum tech companies globally, and we are specializing in quantum AI and quantum security in particular. Headquartered in Switzerland, in St. Gallen, but with multiple offices across Europe and the United States.
My name is Damon Bogdan. I live in St. Gallen, but I work in Basel. I'm the head of Quantum Basel. We are a hub for quantum computing and AI, which just been founded 3 years ago. We are completely privately invested with the aim to democratize the access to quantum computing. And AI is, as we see, a good entry point into the world of quantum computing. And our goal then with the democratization includes also that we've purchased the first commercial viable quantum system within Switzerland together with our other partners like IBM, D-Wave and IonQ.
Thank you. My name is Werner Koss. I'm the country manager of Nokia in Switzerland. And maybe quick overview on what Nokia is doing today. We are developing networks, from mobile networks to wireless networks, optics, and data center equipment. And there is one famous research group within Nokia, which was acquired about 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. It's the Bell Labs research team of about 1,000 people. And they are on the forefront of developing quantum technology. And we are focusing as Nokia mainly on quantum communication and quantum sensing. Quantum communication, everything with quantum security and quantum networks. Make sure that the information which is transferred over networks is now and also in the future quantum safe and also in quantum sensing. So yeah, thank you for that and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, thank you. So we've heard we cover the full span of quantum technologies from computing, sensing, security. And I guess one of the questions that often comes is what is actually, what are real applications right now to see what is really hype and what is reality. So maybe starting with you, Marcus, since you work really with various customers in various industries, could you describe what are real applications that you're working on now to give an idea of concretely what does it mean?
Yes, we all know that the quantum hardware, the quantum chips, still need a few more years to mature so that we have that quantum supremacy advantage point where pure play quantum implementations will outperform the best-in-class classical AI applications. But today we know a solution how we can commercialize this, helping clients creating real value if we select the use cases wisely already today. And that is called hybrid quantum computing. It really means mixing the best of breed of classical and quantum on the software as well as on the hardware side. In particular, what we can do, Terra Quantum, for instance, partnering with NVIDIA, using the GPU infrastructure to create a simulated environment infrastructure to run quantum-inspired software on it already today. And if we select the use cases wisely, take portfolio optimization in banking, chemical simulations for chemistry companies, we can, with this approach, already get superior performance vis-a-vis the best-in-class classical implementations. And that's what we do for a lot of clients. And I do think that this triggers also that these distinct waves where we thought, we have the AI wave and somewhat later the quantum wave, this will actually merge together via hybrid techniques.
Thank you. And maybe following up with you, Alessandro, still in the computing space, IBM is developing one of the most advanced hardware platform. And on the application side, what do you see as well as some of the near-term applications that your teams are working on?
Yeah. So first of all, let me clarify one thing because it's very, very important. These days, you see everybody simply because it's nice and it's a very good narrative to put the quantum lab label on everything. And it's not discuss if it's the right things to do, but what I want really to have people understanding is that the real quantum computing is going to be transformational exactly because the first time in 70 years, we are manipulating information and knowledge with a completely different representation and way to represent information and knowledge. That is super, very important because it's exactly this change of representation that is going to allow quantum to tackle and solve the problem of complexity connecting to the use of certain algorithms. You know, today we can do a lot with IT, but most of the limitation really connect to the fact that when we take a system and we want to increase the size of the system to make it more realistic, including more data, more feature, more physics, at that point, the time of the computational power that you need to solve the problem increases exponentially. So anything that increases exponentially is a killer, yeah? Because at a certain point, independent of the amount of investment that you can do, you are not going to solve the problem if it's big enough. So quantum for certain application is going to kill this exponential scaling, bringing back to a much more reasonable one, and therefore allow to do certain application that today we could not do. That is a transformational power. Up to now, all the evolution in IT has been to make the IT system a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient from an energy viewpoint, a little more dense, more mapped to algorithm, so that you do things faster. But no of the changes in these 70 years was able to tackle this problem of complexity. Now is going to be in this decade the first time we do it, and that is where we will have a huge transformation. Application like the one he mentioned, simulating nature, material science, pharma, chemistry, application to global optimizations, yeah? Simulating or optimizing problems with a huge amount of variables that we cannot do today. And the last one is exactly this interaction and synergy between AI and quantum that is going at the same time to tackle the complexity from a computational viewpoint and the scenario viewpoint. And this is all to be discovered.
Thank you. So maybe transitioning to you, Damir. So Quantum Basel is positioning itself as a hub, operating from Basel, but with the world as a market. Can you say also what are some of the use cases you work with, maybe with the Swiss ecosystem, European ecosystems, if there are some projects you can mention, especially since you are not only a hub active in quantum science, but also with a strong connection to the AI ecosystem.
So what we heard so far, I would like to put it in 3 different layers. The one is the quantum hardware layer. We've heard quantum hardware is not here yet. Some is already possible, but it's still in this development phase. And within this phase, there are different kinds of architecture. So they are superconducting, they are ion trapped, they are even some call annealing quantum computer, and so on and so forth. So we've got different kind of hardware. And for us as Quantum Basel, it was important, as we are privately invested, that we don't put all the eggs into one basket. We want to partner with most of them, including with GPUs over our company Phoenix, where we've got about 500 GPUs of the NVIDIA on site as well by the end of September this year, so that we've got a hybrid approach. This is takeaway number 1. There won't be one quantum computer who will take over, and then we do not need traditional computers anymore. So it will always, in our perspective, be a hybrid approach together with classical GPUs and QPU. Number 2, the second layer is about algorithms. Or let's put it even in a business case. What kind of business case? Perhaps we can combine these 2 layers. So when you write now algorithms for use cases, what we saw is that those kind of use cases are firstly very important to be identified, as Marcus said, because not everything is suitable for quantum computing or hybrid approaches. And where we see a lot of potential is in job shop scheduling, time series forecasting, network optimizations, and quantum machine learning. And within these fields, we fulfilled already a couple of projects. one, let's say, with Pfizer manufacturing life science for drug development, where we optimized their site in Freiburg in a way that they now have got a very optimized process. I can't talk publicly over all these exact figures. Some can find them out by scrolling over the internet. So another one is with Hermes Logistics, where we try to optimize the route of 3,000 up to 4,000 trucks on a daily basis for the last mile delivery. Unipol in Bologna, insurance claims where we can mitigate risks, and so on and so forth. Or just hands-on, if you look up, you see some HVAC solutions here. This is a very easy one, so heating, ventilation, air conditioning. We simulated those kind for manufacturing sites for VINCI Energy, for complex chemistry manufacturing buildings, in a way that they save materials, it's a less complex network, and they save energy when they run these kind of things. So, to summarize, quantum computing is still in its development, yet with what one can do today, already some efficiency are possible, plus you learn the methodology of tomorrow. And what we are, I think all of us agree, is that quantum computing has got a transformative power.
So indeed, so what we've heard so far is that in computing there is a strong activity now, which is on identifying these use cases today for this transformative impact in the near term, longer term. So this is really an ongoing activity. And now switching to maybe another facet of quantum technologies is more on security, network communication. So maybe can you tell us at Nokia, what are some of these real world applications that you are working on?
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we at Nokia, for us, the biggest use case at the moment, as you can imagine, is security. And the awareness of customers, of banks, of public institutions is growing, that at a certain point, all the data which are transferred now over the network can be encrypted. And the basis of all the internet traffic until now has been the trust into these encryption technologies, which is IPsec or MACsec or the RSA, the remote secure access. And these technologies will be, can be broken in the near future. We don't know exactly when this might happen, but it will happen. And that's one of these key areas where we believe customers should start right now in really thinking about ways how to encrypt their data in a quantum safe way. And there are, I would say, yeah, we also have pilot projects already going on. For example, one in Greece with Hellas QCI. That's a consortium, a quantum consortium in Greece, where we connected several companies and public offices in a quantum safe way, and that worked. And as was told before, there is sort of hybrid approach. So sometimes it's already really quantum safe, but we are not everything is ready yet. And that's one thing. Another thing is that we tested it to transfer quantum safe communication over certain limits. And currently the limit is around 50 kilometers, which can be transferred, which is possible. So research is really going into ways, and this will take maybe a few years to transfer data in this quantum encrypted way over longer distances. So there are already projects which are going on, we are working and trying to raise awareness that this might be a big problem. And maybe the last notion is this famous harvest now and encrypt later, that taking away or stealing data now is a real threat. It's not something which was invented by smart companies to sell equipment, but it's really a threat that data which is taken right now can be encrypted in a few years. And this might not only be financial data, which are only valid in the moment, but it might be health data or others, or the defense secrets or whatever. So it can be really relevant data. And yeah, that's something that we believe is one of our biggest use cases at the moment.
So indeed, we have, so within quantum security, there are a few layers maybe for the audience, from classical solutions like post-quantum cryptography that are classical solutions to make software safe to future quantum attacks, maybe in a context where data could be stored now and cracked later. And there are also hardware solutions to really share quantum keys, etc. And Marcus, your company is actually also active in developing such solutions. Maybe could you complement here?
Yeah, sure. No, I also think that quantum security is one of the hot topics. If you can debate about the algorithmic side, is quantum now or is it in 2 or 3 years? Hybrid definitely is evolving. On quantum security, there can't be any debate. You have to be quantum secure with your infrastructure before the quantum chips are there. The day they are there, you are hacked. So that comes first. Actually, the US authorities estimate the Q day, so the day when the first system is hacked, most probably your credit card, RSA, kicking in around 2030. That's not too far down the road, just a few years. And you have to, adopt your whole infrastructure of stored and moving data. So big topic. And this thing is taking off now. I look at it from a commercialization angle as well, right? And the US Standardization Agency, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, has just few months ago, based on a signed executive order by the president, launched and published its first so-called PQC standards. So now 250,000 mission-critical infrastructure corporations in the US, energy, hospitals, etc., have to migrate to those PQC standards. So, and that is a big market kicking off. We work, e.g. for the US Air Force, and what I want to mention here also, because we have that European angle here in this round, right? That's a very smart example how you do regulation. If I think about regulation and think about Europe, I think about the AI Act and I think about the consequences that you just move resources out of Europe to somewhere else. It doesn't help at all. If I think about standardization or regulation in the US, I think about exactly this. They create the standards. If I want to, provide my products to a telco infrastructure player in the US, they ask me for certified products. Our PQC library is NIST certified, so we can deliver into that market. That is smart standardization, which we can learn from the US.
So indeed, and so you actually transition to the topic of Europe. So quantum is definitely a race, like the moon race, the nuclear race, and we are in it now, in between the US and China, heavily investing and developing. And so there is a bit the position of Europe in the middle, still with strong legacy, for instance, with IBM Research Labs, also Bell Labs, some entities here in Europe. So maybe I will ask you, Alessandro, you have a particular perspective because IBM is operating globally. You're managing for the activities in Europe, Africa. So maybe do you have some elements where you see where we stand in Europe? Are we behind? Are we ahead? Maybe in specific areas for quantum technologies?
Yes. So let me start with connected what he has just said about the security and the quantum safe, because that is really a very good example that should show to us, European, what you have to do and what you don't have to do. And he mentioned about NIST and the standardization of the post-quantum algorithm. Maybe people don't know that 4 over the 4 of these algorithms has been developed here in Switzerland, in my lab, in Rushligot, okay? 4 of the key peoples involved in the creation of these algorithms are coming out of Switzerland. They started with 90 algorithms. They down select 4, and the down selection didn't choose for algorithms that were created in the United States. They simply looked at the best algorithms in the world to solve that problem, and they decided to standardize. and they are pushing the full US to do it. Okay? Sometimes here in Europe, what we do, we look at what is happening at the rest of the world, and we simply say, if we don't have a full endogenous technology developed here in Europe, then we don't, we are cut out, we cannot control our destiny. And sometimes in doing this, we decide to invest on things that are not and will never be competitive. And so having strategy that is a European strategy to decide where is better to invest today to make sure that we can lead a part of the ecosystem is vital. Trying to invest simply to, follow China or US redoing what they have done is not clever at all. So to become pragmatic, as soon quantum computing will enter the transformational age together with classical, okay? At that point, quantum application and the quantum software industry is going to explode. And we will be able to have the right hybrid method and the right software to exploit this machine. Is the one that is going to make trillions. There will be a new software valley, like California was a Silicon Valley. There will be quantum valleys developed in the world that are going to control and drive the application of these technologies. There is a huge opportunity for our continent. I'm not saying that you don't have to do the rest, but there is some sort of still for some time, tabula rasa, where you can grow. The same things we have listened about Nokia, about the communication. Once we will have quantum computers, you can be sure everywhere of different technology, you can be sure that it's going to exist a quantum internet. Because in many situations, you would like to move quantum information in the new representation and not to go every time from quantum to classical and then move it, so on and so forth. All the technology to create this network is at the beginning. There is a huge amount of possible research, development, investment, and leadership there. That is where, in my opinion, we should double down. Trying to be first where we can, and try to get the best wherever it comes, and eventually try to control, of course, but not simply try to be the follower. Because if you start with this, I need to follow because I am behind, you always remain a follower for the rest of your life. And that's not good.
Thank you. So indeed, I guess that's also for the audience, very inspiring, but also inspiring also anyone here to make the move to talk to these companies. And so, Marcus, you also just come back from the US. You are one of the few European CEOs to be at Mar-a-Lago in particular. So you have also this specific point of view. And compared to IBM, you're a company built from scratch. You have managed to build a fantastic team, a global presence, raised lots of capital. Maybe turning on a less positive aspect, what do you see as maybe limits to the European ecosystems in terms of funding, applications, or any other aspects?
Yes, and I think this is an important aspect if we talk about also prosperity in Europe and value creation, right? We have to see that we create the next Googles of this world in quantum, right? And it's not about just are the engineers here? So where is that value created for the stakeholders, right? And if we look at Europe currently, it's not enough where we are. We have a fantastic R&D landscape in Europe. Some of the best universities, no problem at all. But it's the same picture as in other deep tech disciplines. Fragmented Europe across the research landscapes is not able to come together and form a commercial champion. We celebrate when we have some spin-outs from university, which is great, and that's the starting point. But there are two aspects of it. If that company matures, we run into that finance gap. There is, these rounds in these quantum techs, it's a few 100 million. You have to find a lead investor who takes, I don't know, 100 plus. If you look at the institutional investor landscape in Europe and compare it to the US and also, more importantly, to also Middle East, you find that Europe doesn't have the firepower, to take those companies through their maturing phases. So that's where, if we talk about subsidies or European programs, have to tackle and address it. Yeah, if we want to take, money from the taxpayer, then we have to put it very intelligently, and think towards the end. And we don't do that enough. And I give you, an anecdote out of my business here. We work, e.g. for the US Air Force in quantum security, on PQC, on QKD, on QRNGs. So who gave us as a European company, and I'm very happy and proud that our headquarters is here in St. Gallen, who gave us the first government contract beyond corporates? It should be Switzerland, right? Or should be Germany. I'm German, but it was the US. I should probably have come from Berlin and talked to Merz about that huge quantum security contract, right? But I came from Mar-a-Lago talking to the US administration about it. That's the thing. Why? We talk in Germany, for instance, right now about a billion, a trillion investment, 500 billion in defense. Defense investments will be asymmetric, will be AI, will be cyber, not so much hardware. So, Europe is talking, the US is acting. And that's the difference. And I'm a proud European. I would love to grow my headquarters here in St. Gallen, but I will only do so if I have the contracts here. If the contracts are in the US, guess what happens over time? So that is really a call for action to all the politicians. If you want to talk seriously, you have to think about this.
And also still on this topic, you talked about this ecosystem. We have indeed a great research, great universities, but then there is maybe this issue in the further steps. So I believe at Quantum Basel, you also have this vision to act as an intermediate to build some kind of ecosystem in between maybe providers like IBM and other companies and end users, and maybe even companies providing solutions like Nokia, Terra Quantum. Can you tell a little bit how you put this vision in action, and maybe with some examples of partnerships and actual actions that make a change here in Europe?
I will, but I would also like to answer the first question, and I really like both statements from Alessandro and from Marcus. I completely agree with them, and I've got three different viewpoints on it. Perhaps one viewpoint, not many knows, but perhaps there are, as an example, even Swiss companies working on quantum computing chip, like Pavel Hermo here from Zürich. He's working on a Swiss quantum computing chip based on ion traps. So there is research in Switzerland to be done. Now, the three viewpoints. First of all, if you look at the investments of the governmental investments into quantum computing, one can compare the 5 billion with the 15 billion Chinese. And then the 3 or 4 billion in UK, 3 billion in France, and so on and so forth. And then one asks, where are we as Switzerland? And it was not long time ago, I always said, based on some statistic, we in Switzerland only invest about 80 million, and which is still 1 billion away from the other ones. Yet I've had a very interesting conversation last week with the Swiss Quantum Initiative, and I've learned that when you take Apple with Apple, and when you compare them and then you look at the research, then perhaps Switzerland is nearly around 1 billion as well. Yet, if we want to compete and if we want really to stay ahead, and Switzerland is so-called innovation global champion, so then I think we have to improve this. And this is why I've also handed in with some politicians a Bundesrätliche Interpellation, exactly to do what you just said, Marcus, and also that the Swiss government will start using it. So the three angles are the investment part. The second angle is if you look at the IPs. So over the last couple of years, the number of IP into quantum computing nearly doubled, not on a yearly basis, but on a bi-yearly basis. Now, the last year was a little bit to drop out because of the AI. Many investments went into AI. So, but still, the number of IP is rising on a global level. Half of this IP at the moment is coming from China, and the other half from US and the other countries. And so the combination of investments and with IP brings me then to the third angle, and the third angle is the number of research institute and startups coming out. When you look at startups as a spin-offs, like say from ETH or from other university, then Switzerland is very good in quantum. It's, I think, at 6th position globally, we as a Swiss country. So I completely agree, we are very there. And now coming back to your question, yes, we saw hardware is one thing, algorithm is another. I've managed to bring together a lot of quantum algorithm researchers from CERN, from IBM, from Goldman Sachs. They all work now in my company, but most important is also the collaboration. So we started a collaboration with the local University of Applied Life Science, with Clément Traversa, in order to create curricula around quantum computing so that there will be more students able to do this kind of research. We also started Institute for Quantum Computing and Quantum Coherence with the University of Basel, where there are already 8 professorships in there. So again, investment into the future, in order that the future researchers will have jobs here, and then they need exactly those kind of company. I hope you won't move out from St. Gallen. Not talking about the taxes, but these kind of company also like Quantum Basel and are the best for the IBM research part. So you see there are different angles on your viewpoint. The collaboration between academia, industry is very important, and we have to bridge the gap from research to the industry. Last sentence. And this is exactly, if you want to bridge the gap from industry, from academia to industry, if you want to take the way over startups, you need exactly this kind of investments. And then we are there where Marcus said. And sorry, it was a lie. It was the pre-last sentence. The last sentence is, we also have to stand up. And if I want to stand up, then one has to do things like that. May I just if you look at this, this is a map of the Swiss quantum ecosystem. And all the companies like IBM Research is there, Marcus is there in St. Gallen, Quantum Basel is there. You see the Quantic, and this map is something we should show around. This is what Switzerland can be proud of, and this hasn't been done by either of our companies. This has been done by the Association of SATV, of scientists. And exactly with these kind of maps, drop me a line on LinkedIn, you will get the link, you can download it, and you will see also where we are with quantum computing. So we really, these are the things we should show. Thank you, Marcus.
Great. Thank you. And maybe since you mentioned from the SATV, so the Swiss Academy of Science and Engineering, and in fact on May 27th, they organized a conference on the next frontier in quantum for pharma in particular, which will be in the Basel area, so also feel free to join. So we've heard about the US, a little bit about China, and maybe specifically when it comes to hardware for network and security, Switzerland has this also a strong legacy ties with China. And when it comes to sovereign technology like quantum, this can also be an issue, as you said, also in terms of contract, large government contract. Maybe from this angle, can you tell us a little bit what's the position of Nokia in this topic?
Okay, now I have to be a little bit careful. I mean, Nokia is a European company, that's clear. We are headquartered in Finland. We have, I would call a second headquarter in France. Our most important market is the US. Second largest market is Europe. I really liked what you said about investing in quantum technology, about cooperations with universities. That's something which the Bell Labs team, the Bell Labs organization is doing. To be honest, not really in Switzerland, but in certain universities in Europe. But we have about 1,000 researchers in Bell Labs, roughly, all over the world. And I think, I don't know the numbers from IBM or from other companies. But looking at the sheer numbers, if you compare this to our main competitor, which is a Chinese company. Most of you know Huawei. That's a company which is supported, and I'm now a little bit careful. I mean, it's a sort of strategic company for the Chinese government. And there is endless funding, and we don't know how much researchers they are employing on topics like quantum computing. We just know that Nokia, Ericsson, we had to cut costs in the last years, about a few thousand employees, not in R&D. Huawei was hiring in the last 2-3 years more than 30,000 R&D people. Only R&D, not other people, just research. And so it's really difficult for companies like Nokia, especially companies on the stock exchange, who are very driven by quarterly results, to compete with such companies. And here I come back a little bit to politics, to Switzerland, to Europe. There are many European countries who start to develop a sort of I would say conscious or sort of critical view where the technology should come from. And that's, I believe, a big chance for Europe. That's a really big chance, especially in the geopolitical situation now between US and China. I think technology coming from European countries, it's a difference. You are not always sure what's happening if whoever has access to your equipment. But if your company, in this case Nokia, for example, is coming from a democratic, neutral, almost neutral government, there is no direct control to these companies. So I can only say that it's really it's an interesting moment, I would say, in history of technology. How this will develop if Europe grabs the chance to develop and to foster their own technology hubs. And I really hope that this will happen in the next years.
So we have very hopeful message, I guess also a call to actions to the decision makers here. And so maybe for a final round here, so we've seen we have this strong government investment, in particular in China, strong support from the government, also in the US. Plus in the US, they have also very vivid VC and private investment scene. In Europe, we are a little bit in between, strong R&D, but maybe still lots of action needed to get further. So maybe to conclude, I would like to also go back to the application aspect, really to the impact for our European ecosystem. So maybe I will ask you in whatever order, what do you see as a winning situation for Europe in quantum technology? Say in X years from now, in Europe, we will do this application, and this will be, this $1 trillion opening up here. What would it be for you as leaders of quantum companies? What would it be specifically for you? I don't know who wants to start.
Let me start.
Okay.
Okay. Let me start. I will make it short. For a dream in, let's say, in a few years, I would really like to have equipment produced. I wouldn't say all developed, but really produced in Europe over the full supply chain to enable quantum computing, quantum communication, and quantum networks, and also quantum sensing. So this would be a sort of dream in the next years, that we will have equipment developed and produced in Europe. And we are, I would say, we are on the way. We are partly producing things, for example, in Italy, in Romania, in other Eastern European countries. So I think that's something which is, I would say would be a big progress for us.
So first of all, I'm sorry, I have to rephrase a little bit the question, because what Europe are you talking about? Are you talking about the geographical Europe, the political Europe? Because in the latter, Switzerland is not part of it. So I want to perhaps start a little bit thinking from the Swiss position. First of all, coming back to your question, when somebody of you was asked in the 90s what is possible with the internet, who could have thought about what we do today? The same question 2007 with the iPhone. Who would have thought what it is possible? And so I do not know what is possible for quantum computing, but I said that the trend is tremendous and it is really great what is possible in the near future. And so coming back to your question, unfortunately, I think that what the topic we've tackled a little bit about quantum security will be the one who will be impact perhaps on a big level as the first. So we heard 2030, might be even 2035, we do not know, but it will come. So I think the first one will be driven by fear, unfortunately, the threat of quantum safe communication. And then there will be a lot of use cases we can't imagine today yet. But we have to start to try out this instrument, and this is what we want to do.
Yeah, I think very well expressed. I would support. I'd say, look, when I founded the company 6 years ago, our slogan was already back then, quantum is now. We were singing that song alone. Yeah. Now I think American Big Tech is singing the song with us. I would really like to have some of the visionary power of the US and US founders here in Europe. I mean, when Elon founded SpaceX, he wanted to fly to Mars. Today, he replaced the whole NASA infrastructure, or a lot of it, not doing this. So he just started. It's now. Let's start. Let's not wait for 5 years, 10 years, then this and this. We have to shape it, and it should be the #1 technology project for Europe to be the leaders in quantum. We do have the R&D capabilities to do it, but we have to do it. We have to really mean it. So I'd like to, support the visionary power and bring it here to Europe.
Good. So I'm going to be the last, even better. So look, I do agree with most of the things that have been said so far, but I do believe that it's super important that we do one step back, become very realistic and pragmatic. The type of innovation and transformation that you can drive depends on the ecosystem that you can control. There are countries like United States and China that from a country viewpoint, they can control a huge ecosystem, they can do very diligent investments, and they have a huge amount of money to do it. In Europe, as he was saying, we are super hyper fragmented. If each of the countries, and not only each of the countries, if each region in the countries come up saying, I want to be the leader in quantum technology, quantum communication, application, and so on and so forth, being ecosystems that are 3 or 4 orders of magnitude smaller than the others. I would like, to become myself, single person, the leader of quantum computing of the world, but it's not going to happen. We need to be realistic on what we can do. So that said, what we can do, one, is to try to exploit the customer base of our ecosystem that is very useful for many companies that are global, and they do have behind them a huge ecosystem to do the investment, but try to tailor to our European ecosystem, right? So that is one thing. The second thing is trying to do what I said before. Decide where we want to win. And that can be done at the regional level eventually. And put all your focus that and try to exploit all the collaboration that we can have in Europe. That, by the way, the collaboration and the diversity that we do have in Europe, and when I say diversity, it means also business diversity, is our biggest and largest value. Having countries like, for example, China, where private and public become the same things as advantages, but there's also huge other disadvantages. And the disadvantage is that if you get the direction wrong, you are dead. Here we have that opportunity, but in order to take advantage, we have to have collaboration across companies that have the right ecosystem, and then decide what we want to win. We cannot do everything everywhere.
Thank you, Alessandro. And thank you also, Marcus, Damir, and Werner. So, big round of applause for all of you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Please. Can I ask Thomas Benko from LIC? We're getting, they're sensing the champagne, I can guess, so that's why they're staying away. Oh, here. Thank you. Sorry we ran over time a little bit. Please have a seat. I'm going to switch the slide. There's your microphone, simple as that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my first panel that I'm moderating. It's more of a fireside chat, and I guess after the whole debate about quantum, that I'm honestly still don't really understand what it is. I don't know if you're better than I am, but it's a hard to grasp concept to put around it. We're going to move to something very tangible that all of you are used to news. And I guess one of the areas where AI, generative AI, has really had a big impact, because it's about creating pictures, videos, and text, is the news industry. So I'm very happy today to have Thomas Benko or Bö here. You are currently with Blick, that's the Swiss tabloid, but it's part of Ringe Group, that's more than 6,000 people. You were in the past a journalist, then you moved into digital technologies. Now you're overseeing the AI activities, so you see holistically what's going on in the space. So I'm going to sit down now as a moderator, and I'm really interested to hear what AI is doing in the news industry. But maybe that's my first question for you. What in the last 2 years since, or maybe longer since generative AI popped up, what's the biggest impact in your personal, professional life you have seen?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact is that I have now this AI in my job title, because yes, and so this changed my life a lot, but AI is also changing the newsroom. I think we are still in the search phase to find out what AI can really do in journalism, and it's quite exciting. And sometimes you find something, and sometimes you run in a dead end and have to let it go.
One thing I've come across recently, I saw on the Blake newspaper main website saying news about JD Vance, I think he was kicking out Elon Musk, was fake. So the fake AI news became news. And I don't know if you've seen that, but I found it interesting. But that's sort of a bit the question, has AI capabilities changed newsrooms' operation? Do you need to do more AI fact-checking? Do you have different teams? How do you handle AI-generated content in a daily situation?
Yeah, I think there are different kind of fake news. So on first hand, there are just false stories, which are, I don't know, maybe based on an error, which is not good, but okay. Then you have to correct them. And then there are these fake AI news, which are now coming up even more and more. First text and pictures, now more and more videos. And you have to, you have to really be alerted, because I brought something, not a slide, but a paper. I mean, if you have the official account of the White House, who posts this kind of picture, so Trump as Pope, okay, we laugh about it, and it's clear for us that it's AI, maybe not for everyone, but it's never that clear, and there was always fake news, and you have to make your research as a journalist, but now it's easier than ever to create something and spit it out in the public. And so we make a lot of courses for our journalists to recognize fake news, especially also videos. We have certain people who they can ask if they have problems to distinguish between real news and fake news. And the funniest thing is sometimes you maybe get a video of a crazy accident and everyone thinks it's fake, but it's real. So you have like both. Sometimes you have something which isn't real, and then you have something which is real, and you think it's fake, and you have to do more research than ever.
When I visited you a while ago in the newsroom, obviously there are many screens, there are many people digesting a lot of information coming in. We have journalists in the field. Maybe moving from a bit the fake news challenge to what kind of AI tools are you using to support your work of your journalists? I think, as I remember, translation is obviously one of those things where AI is quite good at. Is this something you're using at scale already?
So they are like three parts. So there is the old AI, not generative AI, but the old artificial intelligence, which we use, for example, to personalize our content. So to every reader, it looks a little bit different. Then, of course, since 2 or 3 years, it's generative AI. You said it, translation, especially interviews in Swiss German to text or any language. Lot of efficiency tools, title generation, editing of a text, maybe transform a live ticker from a soccer game or a trial, murder trial in a summary in the end. But we also want to explore new features for our readers so that they have something new thanks of AI. So for example, we have text-to-speech, not with an anonymous bot, but we synthesized the voice of our editor-in-chief. Now she left us, so we have to do a new voice. but it's more personalized than our competitors. And we also have AI news overviews, article summaries, and now a big project is our chatbot. It's like the first chatbot in Switzerland, or I think the first one in Europe, which I know, at least in German, which we are rolling out now. It's in the beta phase. So there are a lot of AI topics which we take care of or want to take care of.
One of the things that's been happening for a long time is that digital platforms, from podcasts to Twitter accounts to social influencer and other influencers, have been sort of competing for content online. So in the traditional domain that normally media companies are operating, do you think that AI will become something that will help you defend, your business model, or will there be? Are you afraid that AI generated bots and influencers and avatars will attack the media business? Is there a view on that, or are you still waiting what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's like opportunity and lot of
threats or dangers.
Threats, yeah, dangers, because when you think of course, SEO traffic is quite important for newspapers. And nowadays, people use Google, they come to Blick or to other news sites, and we have a click. And now with this AI overviews and Perplexity and everything, it's you can read it on Perplexity, on Google, everywhere. You don't have to go to the source, and this impacts our business model, I think. So we are lucky that we have a high direct traffic, so that's one.
They come directly to your website.
Yes.
They went to blake.ch.
A lot of people, yes, but still it's important.
And that's probably driven by your legacy as a newspaper now. That's where this comes from.
Yes, and I think it's the Swiss market, which you have a few players, and it's not like US or Germany where you have many players in a market. And the other thing you asked is yeah, it's. I think we have to keep up the level. It has to be true. AI is a tool, but in the end, the journalist is responsible for the article or I don't know what, and it has to be true. And we can't lower the bar. Now, when you go, of course, I'm also on TikTok and it's fun, but there you see often AI content which is really, really bad. And again, we maybe our AI literacy, our literacy is quite high, and we can yeah, we get it and we can scroll over it. But I think there is a lot of bad content out there, and if you go to a real newspaper site, it has to be true.
And
Or
that's
fact checked.
And that's a very interesting aspect, because as a newspaper, you are mandated to fact check, to tell the truth. You have ethical standards. In a world where the White House is posting things that you sometimes might wonder if it's correct or not, how are you dealing with that challenge? Because it could be viewed that this is actually a problem. You have to fact check, you have to make sure it's true, versus an influencer or a podcaster can just say whatever they want. How do you deal with that?
So fact checking needs time, and we always say, hey, to our journalists, you have to have two sources, which, yeah, when you want to do a story, and your reputation is quite fast, yeah, blown away if you do an error. If it's and there it also, if it's a journalist who is, yeah, maybe he wants to do it good, but it happens, okay then. But I think we never should get in this position to use AI to generate fake news because, I don't know, maybe because only because it's possible. You know what I mean?
Maybe just slowly to finish up and be building on that. Do you think that AI generated content, because it's fast, it's customizable, it's outrageous, it can do a lot of things, will this change the need for news outlets or media? Do you think that the viewers or readers will get influenced by AI and sort of view news differently? Are you seeing that the news behavior is different nowadays than before AI?
I think AI is still quite new, and all these new tools, a small percentage of people are using it now, maybe. So a lot of people go directly to Blick, they use Google. I don't know, Google now has AI search. But I think every new medium changes the way we work. I think before social media, you always have like super good high quality images, and now with in the age of selfies and smartphone photos, you lower the bar there because people are used to it, and maybe it doesn't matter if it's good or maybe the quality is good or not so good. At least you have a photo of this event. So I think there it lowered the bar a little bit, and now with AI, I don't think I don't want to say that people don't want to read AI generated stuff, but it has to be factual and true, and it has to be checked. And we are not there yet where you can let AI write a whole story, because AI can remix stuff, existing stuff, which is here, but it can't create new stories or go out in the field and interview people and make research of something which isn't maybe public available.
So to finish up, you still are positive if the newsroom you have across the city will have humans in it in the future and not just bots writing things?
Yeah, I think so. With the capabilities of AI now, I don't think it's a threat yet to human editors. I don't know how it is in 2 or 3 years, but I think every new technique which was coming in the past, it haven't led to less people who work in the newsroom. Actually, there are more, like social media people, SEO, journalists, video, and I think maybe there are more AI journalists in the future. I hope.
I think that's a very positive note. Happy to hear that from a newsroom person. Thank you very much, Boo, for taking time and answering that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, please, thank you. We're gonna now do our last panel, and I'm gonna ask our panelists to come forward. Courtney, you look very innocent back there. Yes, I want you to come up. Armando Asso and Janu Asso as well, I hope. Please take a seat, gentlemen. Four of us. Oh, no, very good. So this is literally the panel. It's in a way, I don't want to call it the heaviest panel, but it's a panel that's actually something we started in January this year in Davos. We have two defense panels. Courtney was already a guest, and it's something we're now adding on. And sometimes it feels a bit weird to have defense conversations, but we're talking about technology and innovation in a new context. So I'm super proud today that we have Courtney Baumann here from Palantir Technologies. You're based here in Zurich. You've been with Palantir since more than 10 years or 12. I forgot. I keep forgetting how long you've been there. You're running global. You're the director for global policy and privacy. So you're very engaged in that. You bring a bit. I know you have pointed views on the US view as a US company. Then we have Armando Fella. You are founding partner and managing director of Sensei AI. You're delivering decision-making tools, like you can force simulation. Basically, you can play around with little tanks and airplanes and decide as an army what you need to deploy, how many troops you want. You've been active for many years out of Switzerland. You service different countries. You lived in the US. You were a professor in the US, so you also have a bit of a US bent. And last but not least, we have Janus Tam from Estonia. And you're a serial entrepreneur. Your company at the moment is deploying equipment in Ukraine as well. So you have a very first-hand view what is required at this intersection of hardware and software, autonomous systems and drones. You are part of the Estonian Defense Innovation Association, so you're very active in this space as well. So we're going to have a debate about how to protect Europe in the future. And we had a lot of discussions before about security. And this is really security as sort of pure in its word as it gets. It's about protecting lives. And I just give you a few numbers just to set the scene, because I was recently at an event not nearby and Klaus Hommels spoke. Klaus Hommels from Lake Star is one of the biggest VC funds. He's part of the NATO Innovation Fund, and he said he believes that defense dual-use security is the biggest investment opportunity Europe has ever seen. And I think some of the numbers I'd like to back up that President Trump currently is talking, he talks a lot about saving money, but he's currently talking about a $1 trillion defense budget, just the US alone. Trillion, not billion. So that's quite a few zeros. And Germany's defense spending has increased by 80% since 2020. Again, a couple of years ago, if you said that on stage, people would say you were crazy. They want to spend now 90 billion, not trillion, but 90 billion. And they started transforming car plants into weapons manufacturing factories. And recently, a German drone startup, Stark, says autonomous strike drones are within reach. They expect those to happen very soon. So we have a lot of debates about new technologies in defense. Some people claim drones will take everything. In the future, we have robots taking wars. Other people like, Rheinmetall is now building more tanks. And I want to have this a bit of a setting the scene. How can sort of Europe and NATO, hopefully with the Americans, I think, as I said, we cannot do it without, how can we rearm Europe? And maybe to start with you, Courtney, because Palantir recently signed a big contract with NATO that's also in Europe to present better battlefield reconnaissance and information. Maybe you can talk a bit how you, as a US company, have built a presence here in Europe and how you interact with NATO.
So the contract that you referenced builds on work that we've been developing since 2018, 2019, Project Maven. So the project is called Maven Smart System, and it fits in alignment with Palantir's general strategy on building information technologies and digital platforms. It's an integrated system for pulling together advanced analytics capabilities, data integration, what we call ontology, sort of object model representation of the logic and information in an institution, defense department's repertoire, but also artificial intelligence. And so a lot of what we learned over time is that deploying artificial intelligence in a meaningful way is not easy. It requires the digital infrastructure to be able to do testing and evaluation, to build the trust, reliability, safety, all of the accompanying characteristics that make this type of technology reliable in the field, and then more critically to be able to deploy that in real settings where you can test it and verify that it's working for real purposes. So this NATO contract is an extension of a lot of work that we've been doing with the Defense Department in the US over many years, and it presents an opportunity to take this technology that was invested in over many years and deploy it into a broader set of settings with our partners and allies internationally.
Maybe taking this and now going to you, Armando, as you are doing a lot of sim simulation. One of the questions, even in private circles, I get a lot, there's like strong believers that drones will do everything in the future. The only thing Europe needs are drones and maybe some autonomous robots. What do you see? You do a lot of simulations across the entire spectrum of arms. Do you have a view on that? Is that our future, we just need more drones, or do we still need tanks and airplanes and other military hardware?
So maybe just for a little bit of context, so we're a boutique company, a software-defined defense company that does simulation to better understand operational level scenarios. So for everyone here without the military background, these are scenarios that are not tactical scenarios involving a few people, but these are scenarios that span a few 100 kilometers in size, and therefore also a lot of systems, as you mentioned, tanks, ships, airplanes, drones, and so forth. And that's not easy to track with pen and paper, so we build simulations in order to play through all kind of different, we call them plausible futures of ourselves, which we call blue forces, and some kind of threat scenario, which is a red force. And this helps us to understand, indeed, whether we need more tanks, whether we need more air assets, such as airplanes, or whether we need to have more communication infrastructure, and so forth. And to make a long story short, there is no silver bullet, never is. We always need, and that's what we see in our simulations, and if we validate them against some actual data, we see that it's always a mix. And what we can say here, however, and that's the silver bullet, if you will, you need to have the tools, and I speak in plural here and not in singular as in my own company or our own particular tool. You need a mix of tools to understand what you actually want to bring to the front line in order to defend your country or to win in general.
So it's not only drones. I think that's what's often been discussed. In Switzerland, there's a big debate, as you know, about the next airplane. We were thinking about buying an American airplane. Now there's a lot of opponents to that. We'll see how that pans out. But moving to someone who's based in Estonia, I think you're happy to, you have a bit of reference, but as Estonia, if it comes to scenario planning, one of the scenarios that comes up often is that Russia would attack the Baltics because of multiple reasons. It's far away, it's hard to deploy, it's close to Kaliningrad. So you are living in a country that is under a sort of reasonable threat, I guess, and at the same time you're active in Ukraine. So tell me, what is in your view the future of ARM? Is it now the drones, or is it everything, or what do you see actually on the ground?
Yeah, we first I'm coming from Estonia, yes, and we are very close to the Russia, where it's very aggressive in Ukraine, and we we're learning very well what's happening there. My teams are there. We have more than 35 people in our company who are based in Kiev and assisting and supporting Ukrainian armed forces every day to fight against Russian aggression. And we're learning what they would do if they would come to attack us. So, and of course, we are preparing. We all know one very good saying from old times that if you want peace, you have to prepare for the war. It's the only way, especially when you have a neighbor who only knows the language about the power and the force. But about the future wars, we actually, in Ukraine, we have seen the real defense innovation. And it's not about, of course, it is always about stealth airplanes. You need to have that too, and radars which can see tens of thousands of kilometers. But the real innovation happening right now in Ukraine on the field, where they're taking commercially off the shelf computers, software, they're putting it together within one weekend, then they send it in the field, and then they were going against conventional defense forces. They're killing every night, every day, tanks, artilleries, logistics, everything. And they're doing basically the same thing you can go and buy from your electronic shops. So that's a true innovation, because they do it very fast. They do all the software defined, the same what we are talking here. They're using AI. They're using regular security cameras, which are in occupied areas. They run AI algorithms during the night. They know how the enemy troops have moved during that period. They know where, how much, where to send attack. Help is with some other companies, Palantir and some other European ones, and also our technologies. They can already shorten the kill chain within from 8 minutes to seconds. So the kill chain means that the moment you know where to hit, you hit. So you know that there is an enemy assets, you want to hit them, the time between you know where it is and where you hit it. So they are doing extreme strong innovation. If you ask me about drones, then drones are here to stay, but you will never win the war with the drones, because winning wars means you need to conquer the land and the minds, and you can't do that with only drones. But maybe tomorrow or in the future there will be robots, and then they can do also on the land.
One of the questions of this panel I'd like to discuss is how do we go, and the entire afternoon is how do we go forward? In the past, Europe was relying on NATO and mostly American, assets in Europe to defend ourselves. Now we sort of have to rethink about that. You were talking about red and blue forces. I'm not sure if you were referring to the US party system, but the question we have here, I know Courtney, you are a strong user about that, and I have as well, is can we do it alone? Can Europe do this all alone? Do we, just build all of that? Do we need partners? And how do we partner? And I think one of the interesting aspects I want to hand over to Courtney is how do you, when you look at procurement, how do we create more innovation? Obviously, in Ukraine, you have a need for innovation. There's less red tape. There's less. You just try things. But how have you experienced the European defense market? How have you been successful in a procurement process, and how do we collaborate in the future? Hopefully.
Lots of questions packed in there, so try and tackle some of them. Can Europe do it alone? No, at least not initially. And I think we need to be candid about that. But it's going to take some time to build up the capacity to be able to build the warfighting tools and integrated capabilities and know-how to be able to manage the threats that are on the horizon. There are lots of things that Europe can do and must do to get up to speed, and that includes learning lessons from its partners like the US. And one of those lessons might come in the space of procurement. This is a challenge that the US has dealt with over the years. I think we've made some advances. There's still a lot of headway to go. But I think one of the most significant advancements over the last several years is one of the things that enabled Palantir to become successful in the defense and warfighting space is challenging the procurement infrastructure. And the way that we did that is by building on the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act, which is actually a Clinton-era policy, signed into law in 1994, but it took Palantir and then later Starlink suing the Department of Defense procurement arm to get them to actually reinforce the practice of this requirement. Basically, what it meant is that the government has to give preference to commercially off-the-shelf available capabilities in the absence of any other prevailing consideration, as opposed to the traditional cost-plus model, which is a model in which the government sort of contracts with the hardware primes, the software primes, and basically funds the research and development to build something over the span of multiple years, which may or may not work. This alternative model of preferencing commercially off-the-shelf available products means that you have capabilities that exist, that have been proven, have been developed at the expense of the private sector, and are ready to be deployed. And I think this is an important lesson that Europe is going to have to take on board as it tries to build up its capacity. It can't just rely on the traditional model to get up to speed. It's going to have to look at public-private partnerships to build a defense industrial base that can start to replace some of the capacity from its traditional allies and partners.
I love that most American commercial success stories involves someone suing someone else. Seems to be a very American approach to innovation. But Armando, should we sue the Swiss armed forces, the European armed forces, to get a better procurement, or what is your insight as a you're not a prime, you don't work for one of the big primes, but if you had a wish to improve innovation in defense in Europe, to rearm, what would you do? Suing or?
I pass the baton. No. Good question. If I had a wish,
I know you have strong feelings about things that could be improved. Let's not name names, but the experience of the last couple of years what needs to happen in Europe? I mean, or let's rephrase to make it less political for you. It seems like Europe is willing to spend a lot of money, at least on paper. Germany makes some big remarks now, Spain. So there seems to be a lot of money on the table. It cannot probably be the best solution that all the money goes to the traditional defense contractor. It should go to some innovative companies. How do you do that? Do you have an idea or a wish?
Well, obviously, I think our current situation has much to do with regulation. And this regulation has been shaped by someone. And those who shaped the regulation over the last 40, 50, 60 years are now so closely entangled with the government that it is actually difficult to place a wish, because this wish is not heard, and you don't have the force, neither the legal one nor the actual monetary force as a smaller or very small company to make any changes. So all that actually remains to you is try to get on stage with something that's indeed genuinely innovative. And that's, to some degree, I think, what made me think of the current relationship, to come a little bit back to your original question, between the US and Europe. Also against the background of the conversation on quantum computing before, as to some degree as a symbiosis. Because even your company was actually founded by someone from the old continent, and then backed by someone from the old continent. And there is some kind of a symbiosis that I think can be exploited by both sides. Why should we in Europe, so to speak, take the risk if someone else actually pays for our good ideas? But then on the other side, this is now put to a test simply because the US says, well, you need to look after yourself. And that's the big question also in defense. How can we start looking after ourselves? And I think no one has really thought about coming up with products at the moment that really distinguishes us from the US, so that the US would start actually saying, hey, we need that right now, because most of the things they actually have across the Atlantic by themselves, can produce it, can market it, and actually bring it to the field by themselves.
Moving over to you, Janusz. One of the things that has changed dramatically in Ukraine is obviously the speed of innovation, or the speed you need to adapt. Obviously, when you're staring down a barrel, or someone's pointing a gun at you, you want to innovate. So that's obviously an accelerator. Do you see this speed and those learnings spilling over across Europe, or is that still a very much contained exercise in Ukraine and maybe some of the Baltics, maybe Poland? How do you experience Europe? Are we getting faster, or are we still stuck in the old ways?
I think we are getting faster a little bit, but more the west you go, the slower you get. So we're already adapting some things like in the eastern flank, how Ukrainians are like procuring, and also we're learning something from US, like this innovation type of procurement models that you, for example, give 3 or 5 companies a task or assignment, and whoever reaches to the goal first will get the contract. And then another thing is that we give more for SMEs. That SMEs are very fast. You can innovate very fast, but you can't scale. You just don't have infrastructure. So you can come up with a super solution or a hardware, but if you need to have them like 1 million pieces, you need still these big companies to scale, to manufacture. You need companies who turn these car manufacturing facilities into the tank facilities, because you just don't have capacity and experiences for that. And also what we see is that we're giving more procurement power for the lower level. So in the old times, or like in the peacetime, Europe purchased things very strangely. Because they purchased very few, then they always put lots of features there. So basically bought not Swiss knife, but Swiss knife is everything you can imagine there. Not even knives, but you know, it's like everything. And it was extremely expensive, and you only produced it 5 pieces. And if you need to do it again, it takes you years to build it. But now, when we have situation and the war in Ukraine have showed us, we have to actually produce not one Swiss knife with 100 different tools, but we need to build 100 different tools, million pieces. And that's also what we have seen in Ukraine, and also in already eastern flank, that if you need a drone, you buy a drone for specific task, and you buy them 10,000. Not just you buy drone which can do 100 different missions and you buy them only 100, because you will lose anyway all of them. They just need to do one specific task. And the second, the procurement is going lower levels. So in like Cold War times, everything was centralized. So there was one body, procurement agency, who bought everything. But in Ukraine, for example, in US there are 11 agencies who buy stuff. I think it's around 11. In Ukraine, there are hundreds. You can buy in brigade level the equipment, what you need, because they know the best how many FPV drones they need right now, or how many UGVs they need, or how many artillery they need. If this information goes to central procurement, it's already old. And if it goes back, they're already receiving stuff they don't need. And in Europe, especially in the eastern side, we have also seen that they give decisions but distributed, so lower level. So Navy knows what they need to buy, not the central part. And that also enables us to do innovation faster. If we need right now specific capabilities, then we go to SMEs, we let them to build the good enough solution, prototype, and then we will scale later. We have seen this, but the more the west we go, the slower it goes.
As you're approaching the end of the panel, I do one last rapid fire round. We do the maybe, we sort of fewer models, you have to think about it. If you, based on your experience, you've been in the sector for many years, in defense and procurement. If you had the power to change one thing, it could be procurement, regulation, funding, you name it. What would be the first thing you would tackle in order to increase innovation in defense in Europe? If you had a wish. I'm still pushing you to have a wish. I'm not giving up.
So I have a very boring answer, but for us, the most important way of actually understanding whether what we're doing is of use is to get, and you said it already, the feedback from the troops. And getting access to the troops in a, I would say, structured way. It's not always good if you can access everyone immediately, and that person also has cash for obvious reasons. But if there is a way of actually getting this feedback quickly, that's extremely helpful.
That sounds very much like decentralization or more a federal system.
I haven't mentioned, we do multi-agent simulations, yes, and the very essence of it is a decentralized system, yeah.
Wonderful, great. Courtney.
I mean, I'll double tap what Armando said. I think there's something really important about what we've referred to as field to learn, and this is an aspect of the public-private partnership landscape that needs to be cultivated in Europe. European defense forces need to provide opportunities for software and hardware developers to innovate in the field. So they need access to operations, the sort of test exercises where the forces are trialing their own capabilities, but at the same time are in a place to provide direct feedback on how the systems are actually working. The last thing that I'll suggest is we are in a software age. That's not to say that hardware is going away, but there are implications of living in an era of software, and that means especially for forces that are going to involve multiple countries, multiple alliances and partnerships, there has to be a focus on integration and interoperability. That means integrated systems between hardware and software, and interoperating between different platforms, different modes of engagement, different models of data, and all of the kind of ligaments and details in between. All that needs to be built into systems for European fighting forces to be successful in future conflicts.
Janos, you have the honor of having the last word.
Thank you.
From the front line. So
I would add two comments. I agree everything you have said both, but I would add two comments. One is that if you're not today in Ukraine and if you're not learning, you have already lost the battle. In defense industry, as an industry player, or as a defense forces of Europe. If your consultants or people are not there learning, you're already losing. And the second thing is that what we don't have in Europe compared to US and also in China and Russia is that we actually don't have a real demand. We just, we have some words. We have like a possibility to take a loan, 800 billion, to buy defense articles, but it's not real money. We always had possibility to take loans. For some reason, they didn't. So that's, and as an industry is commercial. So we have to pay salaries for the employees. We have to investment, all the innovations investment. We need to get return. Capital always goes there where we get better returns. If there is no demand, nobody will invest. If the demand is not long-term, nobody will invest. The reason why all great products coming out from US is that there are long-term demand. If you invest today, like 100 billion for defense industry, you know how you will get the money back. You know the return. You know that they will have a budget next 10 years, at least 800 billion. And then you know the percentage, more or less, how you will get the money in return. In Europe, you don't have such a thing. That's why nobody's investing here for cool products or the necessary products even. Because if you are an investor and you need to invest, then how you will get the money back? How you will know that after 5 years as an entrepreneur, you actually can pay salaries to your employees? If you don't have this long-term demand and this certainty that these politicians actually are willing to defend, and they are relying on European technologies, not other country technologies.
Thank you very much. That's a perfect word. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for discussing it. I hope you found it insightful. Thank you. A round of applause. May I just ask you to stand at your side so we take a picture? I give some final words so people can go up. So then we take a picture once we're done. So
please, or you can, if you're like, you can seat. I'm just going to say to the audience a few words. So
I know they want to run away and drink champagne. So I'll just give that to you. So thank you very much. With that, this is a wrap. We're done for today. And I made some clever notes. Thank you. Before I tell you how we're going to continue, I think what we've learned today is very much that innovation is about trying out things, about collaboration. It cannot happen
by one person. As someone before said, the head of quantum, I want to be that single person. We have to collaborate even when the political environment is changing. I think Europe cannot go alone. I think open source collaboration, decentralizations are important concepts that have been developed also here in Europe. We have a chance, but we have to commercialize more. I think that's the single thing also that was just mentioned again. If there's no one buying things, there is no market for it and there's no investor. So if you're looking for more funding, you need to create a market, as simple as that. With that, as I said, if you liked our format, our next one will be in Davos in January 19th. And if beforehand you're interested in defense, there's a new Defense Innovation Association in Switzerland. If you're interested, actually we're collaborating. I'm part of the organization as well as Armando. And we are going to collaborate with the Swiss Army. They have an innovation summit in September in Gurten. If you're interested in defense and innovation, just talk to us. We're trying to do exactly that thing. We need to reach out across, outside of Switzerland to innovate. With that, thank you very much. How are we going to continue? On the 5th floor, we're going to have champagne tasting, if you like champagne. There are 3 different types of champagnes. If you just say, I like champagne already, I just want to drink, that's fine too. There's enough of that. There's a gentleman, Philip, he's an expert in champagne. He brought 3 different champagnes, so go there and taste. I was told, watch. Yes, yes. There's a little surprise too. There's actually a Swiss watchmaker here. It's not only a Swiss watchmaker, it's a Zürich watchmaker, a watchmaker 500 meters up the hill. I don't know where he is. It's a surprise to me as well. Well, let's see if you find him. You can learn about how to make watches. We have the drinks to about 7:15. We have something to nibble. Thank you very much our sponsor, Canton Network. Yes, they're hosting you upstairs, so feel free. I was told there's a staircase and 2 small elevators. So either you cram into the small elevator or you just do a bit of exercise and you walk up to the top floor. There's also smoking balcony for the ones who like to smoke, is a lounge, have fun. Around 7:15, we'll serve dinner, hosted by 21X. With that, that's a wrap. Thank you very much and see you upstairs. Thank you. So now, we do pictures. So thank you for sitting there. Thank you. That's the camera.
It's so glad to meet
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Very insightful. Armando, I hope it was around Europe saying that we need American. I think it's true. Will you stay for the champagne? You need to. Wonderful. Just shut down. Good. Well, what about you?
Good target. I'm right here.
That's why we're all here. Yeah, sorry, I just we will meet tomorrow. Yeah, I just come from the airport. I just like so you can go upstairs. Oh yeah, sure. Maybe we have some like conversation. Yes, I also want to hear what kind of we are establishing AI humanity. So maybe in the next few Yes. Maybe you can, when you see anymore,